The gentle rain fell over the quiet city, transforming the streetlights into golden smudges on the asphalt. Gabriel Montero walked alone down the almost deserted street, his dark overcoat clinging to his body, his pale face illuminated only by the water's reflections. In his hands, he held a small bouquet of white lilies, Helena's favorite flowers, his wife who had passed away 3 years prior. The cemetery was atop a hill, and the cold wind cut like a blade. Gabriel knelt before the tombstone, her name etched into the damp marble. Helena Montero, a light that never fades. He traced the letters with his fingers, as if trying to feel a presence the world had already taken away. I fulfilled everything I promised, my love. He murmured, his voice choked. But without you, nothing makes sense. For an instant, the silence was absolute. Until coming from the cemetery gate, a feminine voice, soft, trembling, and impossible, broke the night. Gabriel. He turned slowly, his heart pounding. A few feet away, standing in the rain, was a woman. The same height, the same hair, the same face. It was Helena, but she couldn't be there. The woman looked at him with watery eyes, and before Gabriel could say anything, she whispered, I remember you. The bouquet slipped from his hands, falling into the mud. That woman, identical to his deceased wife, was saying something that couldn't be real. And Gabriel felt, for the first time in years, fear. Who was that woman? A doppelganger? An imposter? Or something far more mysterious? Hours later, Gabriel was still trembling. He drove through the city's wet streets, the windshield wipers creaking like a metronome of anguish. That woman's face, identical to Helena's, persisted in his mind like an impossible echo. The man once admired for his coolness and lucidity could now barely breathe. It was the same face, the same smile that used to calm him on his worst days. But there was something different, a lost, tired, all too human look. Back in his silent mansion, the luxury seemed to mock him. The marble walls reflected the emptiness. Portraits of his wife smiled from a time when he believed money could hold on to life. The clock marked the slow passing of hours, and the sound of raindrops hitting the window was the only sign that the world still existed. Gabriel took off his soaked coat and went to Helena's room. Nothing there had changed. Her perfume still seemed to linger among the sheets. The brush, the open book on the nightstand, the photo of them smiling by the sea. He closed his eyes and felt the weight of guilt for not having been there when she needed him most. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Elisa Duarte, the woman identical to Helena, took shelter under a canopy. The cold wind pierced her old coat. She clutched a worn bag to her chest, containing a few dollars and an old photograph. The same image of Helena, but torn in half. Cars passed, splashing puddles, and no one seemed to notice the drenched woman, trembling, with tearful eyes. She murmured to herself, in a tone between dream and despair, I know I've seen that man before. Destiny had just united two broken souls, a man trapped in the past, and a woman carrying memories that shouldn't exist. But what connected them was still a mystery. Who was Elisa, really? And why did she remember a man she had, theoretically, never met? The next morning, the sun tried to break through the gray clouds, but the cold still cut through the air. Gabriel woke up early, not because he wanted to, but because sleep had abandoned him. He drank coffee alone at the long dining room table. Before him, there was room for 8 people, but only the sound of his spoon hitting the cup filled the space. The mansion, once full of life, was now just a museum of memories. In the corner, Helena's piano remained untouched, covered in dust. Outside, the garden she loved to tend was covered in dead leaves. Gabriel tried to convince himself that everything he had seen the night before was just a delusion, a product of loneliness, rain, and exhaustion. But that woman's gaze wouldn't leave his mind. It was the same gaze that had made him believe in love a decade ago. Meanwhile, in a simple boarding house on the outskirts of the city, Elisa Duarte awoke in a small, damp room. The ceiling showed cracks, and the smell of mold mixed with that of burnt coffee coming from the communal kitchen. She looked at herself in the broken mirror and, for an instant, was startled by her own reflection. "Why did he look at me like that?" she murmured. Elisa couldn't explain it, but within her was a familiar feeling, as if a part of her life had been torn away. In recent months, fragments of strange memories had surfaced. A beach she'd never visited, a song that felt familiar, and now, that man. She needed to understand who he was, and why she felt a pain she didn't comprehend. Later, she went out in search of work. She walked for hours, asking at shops, cafes, markets. With each no she received, her hope dwindled a little more. Until late in the afternoon, she stopped before a large mirrored building. At the entrance, the logo of a well-known real estate company, Montero and Vasquez. The name sounded familiar. Elisa looked at her reflection in the glass and saw, for an instant, her own image superimpose itself over Helena's, smiling. Startled, she took a step back. But something inside her told her that was where she would find the answers. Elisa would try to get into Gabriel's company, without imagining that he was still struggling to accept what he had seen. Destiny was about to bring them together again. But what would come next, no one expected. The reception clock struck noon when Elisa Duarte entered the glass lobby of Montero and Vasquez. The contrast was brutal. The marble floor gleamed, the air smelled of expensive perfume, and the soft sound of a piano played in the background. The same melody Helena used to play at home. Elisa froze for an instant. It felt like a trap of destiny. Dressed in simple clothes, her coat worn out and her hair hastily tied back, she drew the attention of the security guards, who watched her with suspicion. But her expression wasn't one of fear. It was of urgency. She held an old folder with some crumpled papers, trying to hide her nervousness. "Can I help you?" asked the receptionist with a polite but cold smile. "I saw the job advertisement for a cleaning assistant. I'd like to apply," responded Elisa, lowering her eyes. The woman nodded, without imagining that this applicant would awaken the company owner's greatest ghost. Upstairs, Gabriel Montero was finishing a meeting with his partner, Antonio Vasquez, who spoke with his usual arrogance. "You need to stop isolating yourself, Gabriel. The company is growing, and the world won't stop to wait for your morning." Gabriel's gaze drifted to the window. Downstairs, something caught his attention. A woman was crossing the lobby. He held his breath. That light gait, that hair tied back the same way Helena wore it when she was distracted. It was her. For an instant, Gabriel's heart seemed to stop. He stood up abruptly, leaving Antonio completely bewildered, and descended the stairs almost running. Elisa was about to leave when she heard firm footsteps behind her. She turned and met his gaze. The two stopped face to face, as if time had frozen. "I need to speak with you," Gabriel said, his voice low and tense. "Please, don't go." Elisa swallowed hard. "I don't know who you are, but I know who you are," he replied, his eyes watery. "Or at least, who you appear to be." The silence between them was heavy, almost sacred. The receptionist watched, confused as a strange emotion filled the air. In that instant, without knowing why, Elisa felt that her life was about to change forever. Gabriel needed to find out who that woman was, and Elisa was starting to doubt her own story. But what they would discover about each other would change everything. Gabriel took a few seconds to catch his breath. Up close, Elisa's face was even more unsettling. Every feature, every curve, every detail was a perfect replica of Helena. But her eyes? Her eyes were different. They carried the pain of the world. "Please sit down," he requested, leading her to a private room, still stunned. "I need to understand what's happening." Elisa hesitated, looking around. That place wasn't for someone like her. The cold walls, the luxurious furniture, the calculated silence. But there was something about that man, a mix of authority and desperation that disarmed her. "You must be confusing me with someone," she said in a subdued tone. "I've never seen you before." Gabriel smiled, but the smile was of pain. "I buried my wife 3 years ago, and you have her face. The same face." Elisa lowered her gaze, trembling. I don't know what to say." The air seemed to weigh tons. Gabriel leaned in a little closer. "Where were you born?" "In an inland village. At least that's what I was told," she replied, confused. "I don't remember my parents. I was raised in an orphanage." The answer hit Gabriel like a blow. Helena had been adopted as a baby. She had never found her biological family. Inside, he fought against an avalanche of thoughts. Could it be possible? Did Helena have a lost twin sister? Or was this some cruel trick of fate? Outside, Antonio Vasquez watched the scene through the half-open glass door, intrigued. "Who is that woman?" he asked his secretary. "They said she came to apply for a cleaning position." Antonio raised an eyebrow. Gabriel's interest was something he hadn't seen in a long time, and it deeply bothered him. Meanwhile, Elisa stood up to leave, trying to hold back her tears. "I'm so sorry, sir, but I have to go." Gabriel gently took her arm. "Please, just tell me one thing." "What?" she asked, startled. He hesitated for one instant, then whispered, "Do you dream of the sea?" Elisa froze. Tears came before her answer. "Every night." And in that instant, something dead inside Gabriel began to stir. As Gabriel drew closer to Elisa, searching for answers, Antonio Vasquez saw this as one threat, and prepared one trap that would expose the millionaire to ridicule before everyone. 2 days later, the city was preparing for the annual Montero and Vasquez grand event, one gala night for investors and partners. It was the type of occasion where appearances mattered more than any truth. Lights, cameras, crystal glasses, rehearsed smiles. Everything perfectly choreographed, until something slipped out of control. Gabriel, for the first time in years, decided to attend. Grief had kept him away from all the spotlights, but something about Elisa made him want to exist again. He wanted to see her, to understand what fate was trying to tell him. However, Antonio Vasquez observed everything with the cold gaze of one seasoned player. He had noticed the different sparkle in his partner's eyes and saw one weakness there. The great Gabriel Montero, finally vulnerable, he murmured as he adjusted his tie. Perfect. Elisa, not understanding the danger, had been invited by Antonio to work at the event, discreetly helping backstage. When she arrived in one simple black dress borrowed from the cleaning supervisor, the entire ballroom seemed to stop. Several gazes turned, and one murmur ran through the crowd. The resemblance to Helena was so uncanny that no one could hide their astonishment. Gabriel saw her and felt the ground disappear beneath him. But before he could reach her, Antonio stepped onto the stage with one theatrical smile. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, holding the microphone. "Before we begin, I want to introduce one very special guest." He gestured for Elisa to come closer. She hesitated. "Please, don't do this to me," she whispered, scared. "Come on, my dear. There's nothing to fear." Antonio said, forcing her to come up. The audience murmured, confused. Gabriel stood up, tense. Antonio then turned to him with one false expression of surprise. "Gabriel, you won't believe it. It seems Helena has returned from the dead." The ballroom fell into one awkward silence. Discreet giggles echoed among the guests. Elisa, mortified, lowered her head. Gabriel, his face etched with anger and shame, approached slowly. "Enough, Antonio." His voice was firm, yet trembling. "This is no joke." "One joke?" his partner retorted, feigning innocence. "Then who is this woman? One hired look-alike? One obsession of yours? Or another one of your sentimental follies?" The cameras recorded everything. Elisa began to cry, not understanding the reason for such cruelty. Gabriel reached out one hand to her, shielding her from the gazes. "You've crossed the line," he said to Antonio, his eyes welling up. "And one day, you'll regret this." But the humiliation was already done, and when Elisa fled the ballroom, in tears, everyone saw the powerful Gabriel Montero run after her, like one desperate man, shattering the perfect image the world had of him. The next morning, headlines blared the humiliation. "Millionaire confuses employee with dead wife at gala event." The delirium of Gabriel Montero, grief, scandal, and mystery. The photos were on every news outlet. Gabriel in one suit with watery eyes. Elisa crying on stage. And Antonio Vasquez in the background, subtly smiling. The smile of one who won without needing to get his hands dirty. Gabriel remained locked in his office for hours. The blinds were drawn. His phone vibrated non-stop, and the silence was as heavy as stone. He looked at one of Helena's photos on the wall and whispered, "I just wanted to understand why fate showed me that face again." But now, everyone saw him as one fragile, unstable, perhaps deranged man. The one who had once been the symbol of success and control was now one laughingstock. Meanwhile, Elisa walked through the city streets, her face swollen from crying. She didn't know what she had done wrong. She only knew she had been used and exposed. Inside her bag she carried the badge she had earned for one day, which now seemed like one cruel memento. She sat down in one park and took one deep breath. "I didn't deserve this," she murmured, her voice broken. "I just wanted to work." It was then that Valencia Ribeiro, one woman of serene presence and compassionate gaze, approached. She wore one colorful scarf on her head and carried one basket of bread which she distributed to the needy in the area. "Are you crying because of someone? Or because of yourself, my child?" she asked, offering one piece of bread. Elisa accepted, still confused. I can't even explain it. I feel like I lost something I never had." Valencia observed her for one instant, as if seeing beyond her words. "Sometimes, the heart recognizes what the mind hasn't yet remembered." Elisa looked up, surprised. "How do you know that?" "Because I've seen this kind of pain before," Valencia replied, her voice serene. "And it always leads to one reunion. Not with the other, but with who we truly are." Meanwhile, at the mansion, Gabriel received one anonymous envelope. Inside, there was only one handwritten sentence. "If you want to know who she is, look for Monte Claro, one coastal village." And for the first time since the scandal, his eyes regained something they seemed to have forgotten. Purpose. 3 days after the scandal, the coastal wind struck Gabriel Montero's face as he drove alone along one narrow road surrounded by green hills and the sea in the background. The name written on the note, Monte Claro, one coastal village, echoed in his mind like one promise and one wound. The ocean appeared in the distance, blue and immense, and he felt his heart quicken with each curve. Upon arriving, he found one simple village, almost forgotten by time. Colorful houses, barefoot children, the scent of fresh bread coming from one local bakery. Nothing there reminded him of the world of luxury he had left behind. In the small square there was one old church. One bell chimed slowly, and one woman swept the entrance floor. Gabriel approached. "Excuse me," he said, removing his sunglasses. "I'm looking for someone named Elisa Duarte." The woman looked up and smiled gently. "Everyone knows everyone here, young man. But that young woman, I think you've arrived late." "What do you mean late?" "She lived here when she was one child. She was taken by social workers many years ago. She only came back one time, not long ago, looking for answers." Gabriel felt one shiver run down his spine. "Looking for answers?" "Yes," the woman said. She spoke of one memory of the sea, and of one woman identical to her. The silence between the two was interrupted by one noise in the background. Valenza Ribeiro, with her colorful scarf and serene gaze, came out of the church carrying one basket. Seeing Gabriel, she recognized him immediately. "You are the man she cannot forget," she said, her voice firm, "and you have come in search of the truth." Gabriel, confused, asked, "Do you know Elisa?" Valenza nodded. "I know her pain, and now I see it's the same that dwells in your eyes." The wind blew stronger, scattering flower petals across the ground, and it was then that Gabriel realized perhaps the answer he sought wasn't in the past, but in forgiveness. Valenza invited him into the one small house next to the church. Inside, the air smelled of incense and freshly baked bread. On the walls were old photos of the village and portraits of unknown faces. On the table, one lit candle flickered, as if guarding one invisible presence. Gabriel sat down, observing the simple details around him. Valenza served him coffee in one clay cup and spoke calmly, as if she already knew what he needed to hear. Sometimes, when love is very strong, it doesn't die. It just changes form. She gazed at him deeply. "Do you believe that?" Gabriel hesitated. "I believe, but I don't know if I want to believe. Seeing someone with my wife's face destroyed and saved me at the same time." Valenza sighed. "What you saw is no coincidence. Elisa always felt one emptiness, one name that echoed in her dreams. Perhaps that name was yours." He frowned, surprised. "My name?" "Yes. She told me she dreamed of one man by the sea. The wind carried away the sound of his voice, but his face was yours." The silence that followed was almost sacred. Gabriel gripped the cup tightly, trying to contain his emotion. "And where is she now?" Valenza looked out at the sea, visible through the window. "She returned to the city. She said she needed to understand why she felt guilty without knowing the reason." Gabriel slowly stood up. "Guilty?" "Yes." Valenza's voice was low but firm. "Because deep down, she feels she took something from someone, and until she discovers what it was, she won't be able to forgive herself." The words echoed within him. Gabriel looked again at the horizon, where the sky merged with the ocean. There, he realized that the journey wasn't just about Elisa. It was about him. About the one man who had lost everything, and yet remained trapped by what he couldn't change. Valenza approached and placed one of her hands on his shoulder. "If you want to help her, Gabriel, you need to let the past rest. Only then will she be able to awaken to the life she still has." He took one deep breath, feeling the weight and tenderness of those words. The distant sound of the waves seemed to call for something greater. Something he didn't yet understand, but was about to discover. In that instant, he knew he needed to return. Return not just to the city, but to the point where everything began. And this time, It wouldn't be to escape the past. It would be to liberate what still remained of it. The sky dawned in golden hues as Gabriel took to the road once more. The car glided through the curves with the lightness of someone who, for the first time in years, knew where he was going. Elisa's note remained on the passenger seat, already crumpled and worn, but now he saw it differently. Not as an enigma, but as a calling. Arriving in the city, everything seemed the same, but he had changed. People still looked at him with curiosity. The reclusive millionaire. The man who had once had everything and then disappeared. This time, however, Gabriel didn't care. He went straight to the hospital where Elisa worked. As he walked through the white, cold corridors, his heart beat fast, as if each step brought him closer to the impossible. There she was. At the end of the corridor, in a simple lab coat, hair tied back, and tired eyes, but the same eyes as Helena, his deceased wife. For a moment he stopped, unable to breathe. Elisa noticed his presence. The two of them stood motionless, looking at one another as if time had stopped. Gabriel took a step forward, his voice trembling. "I needed to find you." She stared at him with a mixture of fear and tenderness. "Why?" she asked, almost whispering. "Why did you look for me?" "Because I can no longer run from what I felt when I saw you." He took a deep breath. "And because there's something between us that I don't understand. But I need to understand." Her eyes filled with tears. "Don't you think I feel it too? Since the day I saw you, something in me broke, and another part was born." She looked away, fighting her own emotions. "But this is wrong, Gabriel. I'm not the one you lost." He approached slowly. "I know." His voice was now serene. "And perhaps that's why I need you. Because looking at you, I realized that love didn't end with death. It only changed its face." The silence between them was dense and soft at the same time. Elisa took a step back, her eyes teary. "I don't know if I can handle this." "Then don't fight it," Gabriel said. "Just feel, and let time tell us what this means." She closed her eyes for an instant, and for the first time, she smiled. A small smile, but real. The kind of smile that carries the beginning of something true. The world outside remained the same, but inside them something had changed. Love didn't resurface from the ashes of the past. It was born anew, with another name, another chance, and the same heart. In the days that followed, Gabriel began visiting the hospital discreetly. Not as the rich man he'd once been, but as someone who wanted to understand the world Elisa inhabited. He observed how much she dedicated herself to patients, especially the poorest. Children with rare diseases, elderly forgotten by families, exhausted mothers who still found the strength to smile. And it was there, in that environment of pain and hope, that Gabriel saw something he had never seen in his gala halls. The beauty of simplicity. One morning upon arriving, he heard a commotion in the corridor. A boy was about to be transferred to another hospital, the only one capable of performing the life-saving surgery. But the transport had been cancelled. The institution's vehicle had broken down, and there were no funds to pay for another one. Elisa, distressed, tried to solve it. They said without advance payment they wouldn't send the ambulance, and his time is running out. Gabriel, without thinking, pulled out his phone. In minutes, he arranged a private ambulance and called 2 doctors from his old personal team. He did it all in silence, without identifying himself. When the ambulance arrived, Elisa looked at him in surprise. "How did you manage that so quickly?" He simply replied, "Sometimes when something is urgent, the heart doesn't wait for bureaucracy." Elisa stared at him for an instant, and for the first time, saw something beyond pain in him. She saw true compassion. After the boy left safely, she approached him. "You paid for all of this, didn't you?" Gabriel smiled faintly. "It doesn't matter who paid. What matters is that he will live." She remained silent, moved. "You could be anywhere in the world, but you're here, helping people you don't even know. Why?" He replied with teary eyes. "Because for a long time I thought money was the only way to conquer life. But what it doesn't buy is the peace of finally doing what's right." Elisa held his hand, a simple gesture, yet laden with something profound. In that touch, Gabriel felt the past dissolve. There was no more guilt, no more confusion. There was only the present, and the feeling of being exactly where he was meant to be. Outside, the sun streamed through the windows, illuminating the white corridor as if the world, at last, was breathing along with them. The following days felt different. Gabriel began spending more time at the hospital, anonymously helping to cover treatments, fix old equipment, and renovate the children's ward. He didn't tell anyone, not even Elisa. He just did it. She, in turn, felt something strange bloom inside her, a mixture of calm and confusion. The more she got to know Gabriel, the less she could explain the invisible bond that united them. One afternoon, as they watched the sunset from the hospital balcony, Elisa broke the silence. "You know, sometimes I feel like I've lived this moment before. The light, the smell of the sea, the sound of the wind. It's like a déjà vu." Gabriel smiled. "I feel the same. Perhaps our souls simply recognize each other." She looked into his eyes, as if searching for something within. "Or maybe it's the universe trying to tell us what we've forgotten." That phrase echoed deep within him. In his heart, Gabriel felt there was still something hidden, one missing piece. And that feeling intensified when, that same night, he received an unexpected call from Valenza. "Gabriel, I found something you need to see." Hours later, he was back at the wise woman's small house. She awaited him with an old wooden box in her hands. It belonged to Elisa's mother. I found it in the church basement. Inside the box there were letters, a hair ribbon, and a yellowed photograph. Gabriel almost dropped it when he saw the image. A young woman with features identical to Elisa's. And beside her, an elderly man with the same surname, Montero. "What does this mean?" he asked, surprised. Valenza placed her hand on the portrait. "That perhaps the bond between you is older than you think," she explained. "Elisa's mother worked for a very rich family many years ago. She was dismissed when she became pregnant. They say the father never knew, or never wanted to know." The silence that formed was almost unbearable. Gabriel felt the ground disappear beneath his feet. His heart beat erratically. "Are you saying that Elisa could be—" "Yes," Valenza confirmed gently. "Your father's daughter." He put his hands to his head, in shock. All the pieces suddenly fit together. The resemblance, the inexplicable connection, the crossed destiny. But with this came an excruciating pain. The love that healed him also brought an impossible truth. Gabriel looked at the sea through the window, the same sea that had brought him there, and whispered, "Then, what I feel for her is forbidden." Valenza responded with a serene voice. "What you feel is love, Gabriel. But what you do with it is what defines who you are." Outside, the wind blew strong, as if the entire world was awaiting his decision. Gabriel drove aimlessly through the city as night poured over the empty streets. The streetlights passed by the car window like flashes of memories he wanted to erase. Valenza's words hammered in his head. "Your father's daughter." His mind fought against his heart, and each beat of the engine seemed to repeat the question that tore him apart. What to do with a love that cannot exist? He stopped the car in front of the sea. The cold breeze cut across his face, but he barely felt it. He knelt on the sand, his hands digging into the wet ground. There where destiny had begun, Gabriel cried for the first time since Helena had died. "Why her?" he murmured through tears. "Why give me a new chance, only to snatch her away from me once again?" The sound of the waves was his only answer. And somehow, it seemed to say that some pains are necessary to purify love, to transform it into something greater. When he returned to the hospital the following morning, Elisa noticed something different in his eyes, a sad but firm serenity. He called her to talk in the garden. "Elisa, I need to tell you something," he began, his voice choked. She sat beside him, apprehensive. Gabriel took a deep breath and told her everything. The visit to Valenza, the photograph, the possibility of having the same blood running in their veins. She remained silent, her face pale. Her hands trembled. For an instant, time seemed to stop again. But now the silence was not hope. It was grief. Elisa stood up slowly. "So that's it," she said in a whisper. "What I felt, what we felt, could never be love." "Don't say that," Gabriel pleaded, his voice broken. "What we felt was pure, before we knew. And perhaps, that is precisely what makes it true." She cried in silence. "But what do we do now?" He stood up and gently held her hands. "Now we choose to love in a different way." She stared at him, confused. "How so?" "I can love you without possessing. I can care for you as one cares for something sacred, because that is what you are." Elisa brought her hand to his face and smiled through tears. "And I can forgive you for being the one destiny gave me, but not the one destiny wanted for you." They embraced, and it was the most sincere embrace that had ever existed. Without desire, without guilt, just transformed love. In the sky, the clouds began to open. The first ray of morning sun touched their faces, and for an instant, it seemed that the universe blessed them for choosing the more difficult path, that of purity. The following days were silent. Elisa requested a leave of absence from the hospital for a while, and Gabriel respected it. He didn't try to call, didn't try to explain. He just continued helping the hospital anonymously, as a way to keep alive the only connection he could still have with her, the good that had united them. But something had changed within him. The man who once carried the weight of the Montero name now walked the streets with simplicity. He began frequenting the community where the boy had saved his life. He helped with community lunches, carried boxes, cleaned floors. Some recognized him, surprised. "Sir, the millionaire Montero, what are you doing here?" And he smiled serenely. "Trying to learn what it truly means to be rich." One day, an elderly woman approached him. "I don't know what brought you to us, my son, but seeing a man like you washing the floor makes us believe the world still has hope." He lowered his gaze, humble. "I also need to believe that, ma'am." Meanwhile, Elisa slowly returned to her routine. Patients missed her smile, and little by little the hospital regained its vibrancy. But every time she looked at the sea from her balcony, she remembered Gabriel's words. "I can love you without possessing you." And that, instead of hurting, strengthened her. Because now she understood. There are loves that don't come to stay, but to teach us how to become whole. One afternoon, when she returned to the hospital, she saw something new at the entrance. A silver plaque, simple, without ostentation. Helena Montero Children's Ward, in memory of the love that saves. Elisa touched the plaque with her fingertips and felt silent tears stream down. That was his signature. Discreet. True. Without saying a word, she smiled at the sky, like someone who finally understands that real love never disappears. It transforms into something greater. Time passed slowly, and Gabriel no longer measured days in figures, but in gestures. Those who once admired him for his businesses now saw him taking public transport, helping strangers, with a light in his eyes, like someone who had finally made peace with the world. One morning as he left the community, he heard a familiar voice behind him. "So it's true, the great Montero has become a street volunteer." It was Enrique Vasconcelos, his former partner, the man who had betrayed him, spreading lies that destroyed his reputation. He wore an expensive suit, the same arrogant smile as always, and a look full of disdain. Gabriel took a deep breath before replying. "It's true, and it has been the best deal of my life." Enrique laughed, shaking his head. "Always the same, dreamer. You had an empire in your hands. Today, look at you, a man serving soup and cleaning floors." Gabriel looked at him serenely. "The empire was a prison, Enrique. Freedom was in the people I couldn't see." Enrique narrowed his eyes, confused by the other's calmness. "Are you sick, or have you lost your mind?" "I lost my illusion," Gabriel replied softly. "And I gained what you're still searching for." His former partner gave a short laugh, disguising his discomfort. "You know what's curious? The newspapers now want to reopen the contract case. They're discovering that I might have manipulated the evidence." Gabriel remained silent, his gaze steady, without anger. The truth always finds its way. Enrique leaned closer, provoking. "Are you going to report me? It's your chance for revenge." Gabriel smiled faintly. "No, time is already doing that for me." The silence that followed was heavy, but not for Gabriel. Enrique, disconcerted, looked away. For the first time, the man accustomed to dominating found himself small before the calm of someone who had forgiven. Before leaving, Gabriel simply said, "I hope one day you discover that winning isn't about rising. It's about bowing with a clean heart." Enrique stood still, without an answer. And as he watched him walk away, the sound of an ambulance in the distance echoed as a reminder. Life doesn't wait for pride to drop its guard. That night, the sky seemed clearer than ever. Gabriel walked along the beach, the wind blowing against his face, when he saw a figure sitting on the rocks, looking at the horizon. Even from afar, he recognized the colorful scarf that swayed gently. "Valenza," he called, approaching. She turned her face and smiled, like someone who already knew he would come. "I was waiting for you, Gabriel. The sea told me you finally understood." He sat beside her in silence. The sound of the waves filled the space between words. "I understood that love is not possession, nor a promise," he said with a serene voice. "It is surrender, and sometimes it is letting go." Valenza nodded. "Yes, but there is something more. Love is also memory. It continues to exist in everything we touch with our heart." Gabriel looked at the sea. "I thought life had ended when I lost Helena. Then I thought it was starting anew when I met Elisa. Now I see that both taught me the same thing." "And what was that?" Valenza asked with sweetness. "That true love isn't about who stays. It's about what remains." Valenza smiled, satisfied. "And what remains, Gabriel?" He took a deep breath, closing his eyes for an instant. "Kindness, forgiveness, the desire to be useful." "Then you are ready," she said. "Ready to live without fear of loss, because whoever understands love understands that nothing is ever truly lost." A beautiful silence formed between the two. The sea reflected the full moon, and for a moment it seemed as if the entire universe was listening. Valenza slowly stood up. Destiny broke you to teach you how to heal. Now heal what the world still doesn't know how to mend. Gabriel stood up as well, feeling a gentle warmth in his chest, a mix of gratitude and purpose. And where do I begin? She looked at him with tenderness, where it should always begin, with love. As the woman walked across the sand and disappeared into the mist, Gabriel remained still, looking at the sea. He knew that meeting wasn't just a farewell. It was a transition. And for the first time in a long time, he felt he no longer needed to search. What he sought had been there all along, within him. Months passed. Gabriel Montero's name, once synonymous with scandal and downfall, began to resurface, but in a completely new way, not in the business columns, but in the human interest pages of the newspapers. The former businessman who transformed pain into shelter. That's what they called him now. With the savings he still possessed, and with donations that began to emerge spontaneously, Gabriel founded an institution called Casa Helena, a home for abandoned children and women without support. At the entrance, a phrase engraved in white marble read, "Here, love doesn't die. It restarts." Elisa was one of the first to visit the place. When she arrived, she stood silently before the simple yet welcoming building. The walls were painted in soft colors, the garden full of flowers, and in the central courtyard, the sound of children's laughter filled the air with life. Gabriel appeared at the door, with the same tranquil smile of someone who had learned to live in peace. "I couldn't call it by any other name," he said, pointing to the plaque. "Casa Helena. She taught me to love, and you taught me to let love continue." Elisa smiled with tenderness. "And now, you teach the world." They entered together. Inside, Gabriel showed her every room, every corner, every small miracle that had been born from transformed pain. In the dining hall, children ran to hug him. A little girl of about 5 years old pulled his hand and asked with purity, "Uncle, is it true that you lost someone in heaven?" Gabriel knelt before her, with a sparkle in his eyes. "Yes, my dear, I did. But when we help someone here, it's like embracing those who stayed up there." The girl hugged him tightly, and for an instant, time stopped again. Not as at the beginning of the story, in pain, but in fullness. There, Gabriel understood the meaning of everything. Life hadn't taken love from him. It had only multiplied it. Elisa watched the scene with tears in her eyes. "Helena would be proud," she said softly. "And you?" he asked. She nodded. "Me too." In that moment there was no romance, no desire, just gratitude. And this form of love, silent and infinite, was the purest of all. Time passed, and Casa Helena flourished like a lighthouse in the midst of the gray city. Where there was once abandonment, now there was singing, sharing, and hope. The walls held stories of new beginnings, and Gabriel Montero's name was no longer remembered for wealth or tragedy, but for kindness. One morning, he walked through the garden, watching the children playing among the flowers. The gentle wind carried laughter and the scent of rose bushes. Suddenly, he saw Elisa arriving at the entrance. She carried a small plant in her hands, wrapped in a damp cloth. "It's an olive sapling," she said, smiling. "It lives for a very long time, and symbolizes peace." Gabriel received the gift with emotion. "Then let's plant it together." The two dug the earth with their own hands, side by side, and placed the small root in the fertile soil. When they finished, they stood in silence, observing the sprout rising under the soft morning light. "Do you think it will grow strong?" she asked. "It will," he replied, looking at the sky. "Everything born of love flourishes, even if it takes time." Elisa hugged him, and in that embrace there was forgiveness, gratitude, and the certainty that life didn't need to be perfect to be beautiful. Later at dusk, Gabriel sat alone in the courtyard. The sun slowly descended, painting the world in gold. He closed his eyes and for an instant felt the touch of a warm breeze on his face, as if someone he had loved very much was there, smiling from somewhere beyond life. And for the first time, he didn't cry. He smiled. Because he understood that true love never dies. It merely changes form and continues to guide hearts that have the courage to begin anew. The camera would slowly pull back, revealing the orphanage, the children playing, and the newly planted olive tree swaying in the breeze, a timeless symbol of enduring resilience. Then Gabriel's soft voice would bring the story to a close. Pain was the price I paid. Forgiveness, the healing. But love. Love was truly what kept me alive. If this story resonated with your heart, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and share it with someone you care about. Perhaps without even realizing it, you might just plant a seed of hope in someone else's heart too.